Hi, everyone, and welcome to Around the Ladder. I'm Erika Steinberg. One of the things that I've noticed while talking with people on this podcast is that stepping off the traditional career path can feel incredibly freeing, but it can also be surprisingly confronting. When you're inside a corporate structure, there are layers around you. There are bosses, organizations, systems, expectations. And if something doesn't feel right, it's easy to point to the job, the company, or the culture and say, that's the problem. It's all out there. But when you decide to build a ladder of your own, many of those layers disappear. And sometimes what shows up instead are patterns that we've been carrying with us for years, like from when we were kids. Things like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, anxiety around uncertainty, or the feeling that our worth is tied up in doing a good job, or even just like that you have to be a good kid. And if there's a giant arrow pointing at me, there's a reason for that. So I wanted to explore that part of going around the ladder a little bit more deeply. My guest today, Laura Guy, is a licensed clinical social worker who works with both adults and children, which I think gives her a unique perspective on how early experiences can shape the way we approach work, success, and even risk later in life. So today I'm looking forward to talking about what can surface when people step off the traditional career path, why high achieving professionals can struggle when they leave a structured environment, and also how to recognize when the voice in your head might actually be coming from the perspective of your younger self rather than the adult that you are today. So first, Laura, welcome. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. I will be forever grateful to Laurel for introducing us. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Eric. I'm really excited to do this.
Thank you. So, when we first met, you shared with me that you work with a lot of high achieving adults, and that many
Mhm.
of us, I will include myself in here, are anxious overachievers, I think was the term.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
why? And that feels right. Why do those things so often go together?
Well, first, I just want to say that we often think of anxiety as a negative emotion, right? We think of it as a bad trait, but it really gets a bad rap. It's not all bad. A certain amount of anxiety is actually adaptive, right? It makes us sensitive to dangers, real or potential, and we need it for survival. It has a function. It tells us to take care of ourselves and what to look out for and what to plan for. So it makes sense that a lot of high achievers are going to be fueled by anxiety. It helps us notice mistakes, spot problems, we're alert to risks. And in a high achieving anxious person, this comes from a mix of biology and socialization.
Mhm.
Part of it is just how people are wired. They may just be more naturally a bit anxious. And another part of it comes from our environments. We were often raised in environments where performance mattered. It could be your family of origin, the school you went to, or even just kind of a competitive group of friends. You see this a lot in New York City, right? It's kind
Yeah.
of an environment that breeds this. And anxiety pushes us to over prepare. You obsess over details and it gives you that sense of urgency. If you're worried about letting people down, you become ultra reliable. Are you afraid of failure? You're going to double check, you're going to triple check. You might wake up in the middle of the night and check it just one more time, right? Before you go back to bed, if you can sleep instead of adding to your to-do list. But over time, this gets reinforced. People are like, you're so amazing. I love your
Uh-huh.
work. You always deliver. I
You
can
never
count
make
on you.
mistakes. You're so accurate.
I can trust you with anything, right? Like this is, this becomes your identity, who you are. So sometimes that reward is pleasing someone else, and sometimes it's achieving your own goals or, achieving an objective goal and hitting a target. Like I see this in teenagers. I hit a certain SAT score, right? Therefore, I'm smart. It's these things that give you the validation, whether it's an external reward or external validation from others. But either way, your brain learns push harder, work harder, be in overdrive, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah. So then, I mean, for some people, it also sounds like achievement becomes a coping mechanism. If
Yeah,
I keep achieving, I'll be okay.
yeah, absolutely. It becomes a coping mechanism for many people. One way we see that is when you have a need for control, right? This happens for people who grow up in unpredictable environments. It
Mhm.
could be emotionally, socially, academically, it could be your family of origin. It offers a formula. You work hard, you do this, you achieve the result, and you're going to get that approval. So there's a predictability to it when other things don't feel predictable. And this is especially true for people with trauma histories or difficult family situations. or just a naturally anxious person that feels some relief from that, or people who have neurodivergence, like I'm thinking a high achieving person with ADHD, right?
Yeah.
You kind of learn to cope and cover this up. Another thing is belonging. It gives you a sense of belonging. Some children internalize messages like, I'm valued when I perform. This often happens subtly. It can be that they're only praised for performance and it reinforces this idea. It can be in families or situations where, you know, inherent worth isn't necessarily praised or emotional validation is not necessarily provided, but this is a supply of good feelings and good relationship. I achieve, people praise me, it feels good. And so over time, that becomes a way of feeling safe, feeling competent, and being seen by people that matter to you.
Yeah. So then, but what happens when someone who's been so focused on achievement starts to question the path that they've been on? You know, like if you've been going for that next rung up the ladder, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you start and you've been achieving, you've been doing what you're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden you start to feel like, is this the right path? Is this even what I want to be doing? Is this the right place for me? You know, what can happen to someone when they start to ask those questions?
Yeah, this reminds me, I once worked with someone who said to me, I'm deeply ambivalent for somebody that got to this level of success. Right? She was like,
Oh my goodness, I've never heard it put like that, but I get
mhm.
that.
Yeah, no, she was just kind of like, who would have thought that I would achieve my dreams and go, eh. And that can be a deeply anxious time for people. So when you're having those thoughts, it often feels like the rug has been pulled out from under you, right? The performance that kept you, as we mentioned, safe, feeling valued and grounded, it kind of disappears and it's replaced by uncertainty. There's usually a loss of identity with this too when you start questioning it. If this isn't everything you think it's going to be, if you're not measuring your self-worth this way, then what would that mean? You're thinking, maybe I don't want to be here, but what would happen if I stepped away, right? Who would I
Yeah.
be? So it starts to add that, and that can lead to some confusion, right? You're an achievement focused person, you excel at creating structure, but if you step off the path from structure, how are you going to know if you're succeeding? What's the next reward? Where are you going? This isn't the negative that it sounds like. It's just a difficult first step. Usually, when people are questioning, it's often the beginning. It's an opportunity. It's a doorway to self-reflection and growth. It gives you a chance to start seeing achievement as a tool and not the only measure of your value. um, you start to think about what achievements actually matter to you. What would you want in your own life? How would this be more aligned with who you actually are, not just external validation or hitting a goal because you can?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember, I mean, I recorded another episode just last week
Yeah.
with two women who I'm friends with, and we were
Hmm.
talking about how our definition of success has changed. And one of them, Alina, said that the first question she asks is, "Am I healthy?" You
Yeah.
know, am I healthy? Like that's that, you know, if you reach that bar, that's their first thing. And she said that wasn't what it was like when I was younger. She said, but now things have changed. And, you know, do I have my health? First thing.
Yeah. Like I knew somebody who was a competitive athlete. And she said, when I was younger, it was all about my performance goals. And now it's about, am I going to stay active through my life?
Yeah.
Is my fitness going to carry me through my old age being active and present?
Yeah.
Rather than, how many ultra marathons can I run?
None for me, but that's okay.
None for me. That was her. That was her, not me. But yeah,
I
no.
re-
So it's realigning your goals, right?
yeah.
Sometimes it's not abandoning anything. You're not stepping off the ladder to meditate 24/7 and
Yeah. No, no, no.
you know,
I mean, some people might, but, you know, that's
yeah,
okay. Geiggesund, as my
most
grandmother
of
would
us
say.
aren't.
So I remember though when we spoke that you were talking about tolerance for uncertainty and that it's
Right.
actually a skill that you can build.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So what uncertainty is the heart of why leaving a structured path feels destabilizing, right? Because when you have unstructured, there's predictability. Most of us, not just high achievers or anxious people, thrive on rules and measurable outcomes. we kind of go along this way. And when we step into the unknown, the roadmap disappears and it just gives us kind of a what is going on here feeling. And
Yeah.
so tolerance for uncertainty is a skill. It's not just a trait. I'd be remiss if I didn't say some people are naturally better at it than others, but it's something that we can all cultivate. And we want to cultivate it so that we can have the ability to make decisions, take risks, and move forward, even when outcomes are not guaranteed. So it's learning to trust your own judgment and distinguish real risk and danger from imagined risk and danger. So in practice, what does this mean, right?
I was going to
In
ask,
pra-
like, what is the way to go? If somebody's saying, that's me, like, what's one step that they can take to start to cultivate that skill?
yeah. Well, so one step you could take to cultivate this skill would be accepting the feeling. I can go into this a little bit later, but first you're going to notice that feeling. So this comes up a lot with a lot of ways that we cope with things. You're going to identify that feeling in yourself and you're going to be like, wow, I'm feeling really anxious about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I don't have any predictable answers. And you can notice, yeah, there's a part of me that really is nervous about that. What that does is it allows you to sort of identify this part of yourself and separate it from the part of you that's making this decision for some really good reasons,
Yeah.
right? And you're going to kind of build your tolerance for that uncertainty. So you're going to acknowledge it. You're going to say, what's going on in my body? What kind of thoughts am I having? And you're just going to notice them and kind of step
And
away.
that's enough for now. And that's enough for yeah.
That's a great first step. It's actually called cognitive diffusion. And it's a skill that comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, but it's also, you'll see it through all other kinds of therapies.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap between things. But the reason that we say that is it's when your thought is identified as a thought, when you are fused with your thought, you're just letting it drive. It's
Yeah.
taken over the wheel. You've had this thought like, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I need to do all of these gazillion things. And you're just going to go with it. But if you can say, oh, wow, I'm having an anxious thought, like I need to do something now. And then you can say, wow, where's that coming from? Do I really need to do something now? And you can check in with yourself. No, that's actually not the best plan, right? I
Yeah.
don't need to do this thing. I want to be able to step back and think about it. You need to be able to kind of tolerate that discomfort and recognize it.
Yeah. And like you said, like just gain a little bit of distance from it.
Mhm.
Put it
Yeah,
out here instead of inside you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You are not your thoughts, right? And you have a lot of thoughts. Interestingly, most people believe their own thoughts, and a lot of them aren't true. A lot of
Yeah.
them are random or based on other things. And so sometimes just consciously examining it can give you that space.
Yes, yes. Like if somebody else said that to you, you'd be like, what the hell? But when you say it to yourself, you don't question it. You take it as the truth, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to the childhood aspect of this because this has been coming up a lot and I hear
Hmm.
people talk about it. And if, how do you see childhood issues showing up in people's professional lives? I mean, I know I was going to ask, do you? But I know that the answer is yes because we've talked before. How does it show up? I mean, I know what it's felt like for me where I was able,
Hmm.
where I felt like at the mercy of my emotions. And now that I look back in hindsight, I can be like, I can say, oh, you know what? I don't think I was really fully functioning as an adult woman. I think I was like 6 years old or 7 years
Yeah.
old.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. Those childhood experiences show up and they shape who we are at work. They shape how we lead, how we do our work, how we relate to others. And this can be just based on our individual experiences. And there's, the whole field of organizational psychology will tell you that lots of us enact family systems patterns in systemic organizations. So you'll see that as
Oh my God.
well.
Oh, so boss becomes mommy or daddy, and you have to
Mhm.
please them. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I once took a supervisory job that was going to kind of be in a middle management kind of supervisory position. And I had a friend say to me, I think you've had enough family dysfunction that you'll do really well at this. You know?
Like, thank you, I
I was,
think.
yeah, this is what happens when your friends are therapists.
Yeah.
Like people say things like this to you. But so some examples of kind of what happens is if you're in a structured or achievement focused family, that fosters discipline and reliability, but it can also tie your self-worth to performance, right? This is what we do, we achieve. If you're in an unpredictable and chaotic household, you could end up kind of cultivating hyper responsibility, hyper vigilance, feeling like you need to create order through your work. You need something to be going well and you have control over this. People who grew up with neurodivergence, like high functioning ADHD, that can shape focus and problem solving skills, can make you very creative, but it also comes with overcompensation strategies that are exhausting. You end up with a lot of fear of failure, perfectionism. I need to check, and recheck. I need to be the most prepared person in the room because I can't mess up, right? We also see parentified children, people who took on adult roles early, and often they grow into adults who are very, very capable, but they struggle to rest, they're unable to delegate, or they don't prioritize their own needs, right?
Eldest daughter syndrome that we've been hearing so much about.
Yes, and I would actually say that that pretty much to me falls very much like this, except that it's a very gendered presentation of this, right? Where you can be parentified simply by being an eldest daughter, and it can come from your parents, and also there's a lot of social expectations, right? You're the older sister. You should do this.
Mhm.
Help your mother. Look after your younger siblings. You're the one that keeps everyone together. You're the glue. You can get that messages from your parents. You can get it from your larger extended family, and you can also just get it culturally.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, imposter syndrome is not something that um, people haven't heard about. And the more
Mhm.
I talk about imposter syndrome, the more I hear other people talk about their imposter syndrome. And it's
Mhm.
been men, women, older, younger, I mean, all over the place. Where does that even come from?
Well,
Or where
it
could it come from? I'm sure it could come from a lot of places, but
Yeah, it can come from a lot of places. We see it often when people are in a new role or starting something that they're not as comfortable with because some of the scaffolding that we rely on has disappeared, right? So if you're in a new job, a promotion, an important meeting, doing something a little different for the first time, you may have less people around you saying, "You're doing great," or you may have less of a measure that lets you know, "Yes, I'm on track." And that can lead you going, do I belong here? Because this achievement and validation is so important to you, right? And
yeah,
if you're not entirely sure where you're getting it, it can really be anxiety producing. There's also, like we talked about, childhood patterns, right? You may have been raised with conditional approval. You felt praised and loved most when you were performing well. So if you're not sure how you're going to do that, could you be in big trouble? If you're the oldest or the parentified child growing up, especially in an achievement-oriented household, can you keep this up? You have to always get it right. You're not allowed to fail. And so if you're in a new situation, you may think, even if it's just like a little step different, you may think, I'm going to fail.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I know for myself, I was so tied up for such a long
Hmm.
time, so tied up in my attention to detail. It meant
Right.
it translated into I cannot make a mistake.
Hmm.
I am so attentive to details so that if I make a mistake, I'm not being who I'm supposed to be. So this is bad. And if I made a mistake, I would feel like my whole world was collapsing. Sometimes it
Yeah.
still does if I'm
Yeah.
not aware of what I'm feeling.
And if you're trying something new, that feels higher stakes.
Yeah.
Like I said, and even if that's something new, it might not register that it's something new, but I'm giving a talk I've never given before. Anything, even if it seems like it's in your wheelhouse, to you, it might not feel that way.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that. I can see that. So what are some signs, or like how can someone recognize if you're reacting to a situation um as an adult, or if you're reacting to a situation from an earlier emotional pattern, like something from childhood? Are there physical symptoms? Are there how can you know that, oh my goodness, this is something that is I may be not fully in control of my own of my own self the way I think I am right now.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is you want to notice that part of you is really reacting right now. It's usually something you would find disproportionate, right? So it's something that if you step back for a minute, and it could be, you don't even have to step back because that requires cognition that you probably don't have. but maybe just prime yourself to know that my heart is racing. I'm having like a gazillion thoughts going off. I feel like I can't breathe. My stomach hurts. My head hurts. And then you can ask yourself, what's going on, right? What's going on here? Does this seem like proportionate to what's happened here, or has an old pattern stepped in? And you first just noticing, like we said, and naming it is key to that.
Yeah.
And then what you want to do is observe your feelings. You can check in with your body, take a deep breath, kind of notice your posture or your tension, what's going on here, and just ground yourself in the present moment, right? And kind of acknowledge what you're feeling. And then you can observe your thoughts as well. What am I thinking? What's going through my head right now? And then you want to anchor yourself in the present moment. You say, okay, what's actually going on here? And what's true versus what am I imagining? And you can say to yourself, you can stand up and stretch and say, I can handle this, and kind of bring yourself back. I'll just give you like a typical work example.
Oh, good.
This is something that happens, I'm going to say email because the less we can infer from things, the more we go off in our heads and make up things. So your boss sends you an email, or an important client sends you an email that says, "Hey, could you meet at 4 today?" And that's it. Now, you have a great relationship with this person. You have no reason to believe there's a problem. But if you're somebody who's grown up, afraid of failure, constantly afraid you're going to mess up, you're immediately going through everything you've ever done to see what they could be mad about. In fact, you may decide you're getting fired. And, this is not true. I mean, when you think about it, you're like, do I have any reason to believe this? And then you have a couple choices once you bring yourself back to that
Yeah.
and calm down. You have some choices about how to react. You could say, no big deal. I'll show up at the meeting. We have a good relationship. You could send an email that says, yes, I can meet then. What's the agenda so I can prepare? You're allowed to follow it up.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I am certainly guilty of getting a, probably innocuous sounding message like that and just spinning off into like imagining all of these things that it could be, and I my imagination always goes to the worst thing, whatever
Oh,
the
yeah.
worst outcome is. But
Hmm.
I remember years ago, it was probably 10, 12 years ago, maybe even longer. I was at a conference, and it was at a segment, a panel about public speaking, and we were doing some like they were doing some polling, and
Yeah.
they said, online speaking, if this happens, if I have to, sorry, public speaking, not online speaking, public speaking, if I have to do this, that, I'm afraid of all of these things. And then the last one was, I'm afraid I might die. And there were people who clicked that. Like, they were literally like, they went to the worst possible outcome, like, this, I might actually kill me.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of people who were really at that, who were clicking on like 4 and 5, which were the worst possible outcomes. I clicked 4. I didn't think I was going to die, but I clicked 4.
You knew you
So
would live through it.
I knew I would live through it. But yeah, I think that in some cases we are wired to immediately go to that place where, like, oh my goodness, what's the worst thing that could happen to me here? And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, when you have that kind of anxious hypervigilance, it helps you. That's why you're the one who's always prepared. But it also can really, drive you in situations that are ambiguous or unclear. You're going to immediately see the danger.
Yeah. Yeah, because it sounds like it could be this, you can get into this loop where you're
Mhm.
constantly prepared, and then people bring more to you, or then the expectations are higher. And so you have to constantly prepare even more. And it
Mhm.
can just go on and on and on.
Yeah, when Inside Out 2 came out, and
Oh, I
there's
didn't
this,
see that one. I saw the
oh, you
first
should
one,
see
but
it.
not the
Well,
second one.
there's the scene in it where anxiety hires cartoon artists, a room full of them, to draw all the possible bad scenarios. And I had people telling me after that came out, they're like, that's what happens in my brain.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, yes, they did a lot of research for that movie in cognitive psychology, and that is indeed what can happen in an anxious brain. You're just preparing for all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah, or like you play out the
Hmm.
conversation before it even happens. And so you've
Yeah.
already had the conversation, and the conversation hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. Okay. So, how Not how. Why do people who are used to clear milestones, like that structure, your clear
Mm-hmm.
milestones, your achievement, why is it that they are struggling more when they decide they make the decision themselves,
Hmm.
usually, not all the time, actually, not all the time, to step off the ladder. Sometimes somebody gets laid off, they get fired, and so you're starting your own thing, your own business out of necessity. So it's not always your own decision. But there are plenty of people like myself who make the decision
Hmm.
themselves. And so
Yeah.
why is it that when we do this, we decide like, okay, we're going to take back control, and then you still end up struggling so much more with uncertainty. Is like, why does it feels like, why does this keep happening to people who, like you said, are such overachievers,
Yeah.
and so achievement and success focused, and then sometimes you can find yourself at a loss.
Well, part of it is because when you leave that structured job, there's no one to validate you, right? It
Okay.
so that some of it is there's no boss, there's no coworker saying, "Thank goodness you're here." And sometimes even just that, not even like validate necessarily in a top down, but even people around you, it's validating to be among other people doing kind of the same thing. So
Mhm.
suddenly you're alone and the success of it is all on your shoulders, right? And since you constantly believe if you fail, it's going to be very detrimental, the stakes suddenly feel very, very high.
Yeah.
Your inner critic, your self-doubt, your old patterns, they come calling for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all hanging out in the conference room in your head, letting you know what could possibly go wrong here. But it's even more than that. It's not just the external validation or the concrete milestones that you're missing, but there's also just kind of some of the structures that provide us with guidance during the day. So there's a real logistical free fall with it too. Just even in terms of, what does my calendar look like? How do I know what I should be prioritizing? And I think
Mhm.
everybody goes through that, whether you're an anxious, high achieving person or a creative individual, I've got to build this all now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But it's also a great opportunity. It's where you have the freedom to align your goals with your values.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that I've learned is that so many people don't align the business so that it works for them. And
Right.
that I've spoken with other business consultants who work with business owners, and they have to constantly remind them, you get to make the choice here. This is your decision. You get to pick.
Mhm.
And inevitably, when they're working with clients in that regard, their client, the business owner, will look at them and be like, "Oh my goodness, that's right. Just keep reminding me of that."
Mhm.
So and I've gone through that myself. I find it so
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, yeah. I worked with somebody who said, now that I'm my own boss, I've realized that I'm a very, very bad, difficult slave driving boss. The good news is that I'm only exploiting myself.
That is true. So if somebody listening today
Mhm.
is realizing, like they're listening to all of this and they're realizing that their old patterns are showing up in their work life, whether they work, honestly, whether they work for
Mhm.
themselves or whether they're in a structured organization, what's a healthy way to start addressing it? Like you've gained awareness. That's there.
Mhm. I think when you gain awareness, that would be the first step, right? And so you're going to have kind of mindful observation, what's going on. We talked about that. You also want to accept what's going on with you, right? You want to accept that feeling without trying to erase it or control it. So this kind of builds up your tolerance for uncertainty just by sitting with it. Then you're also going to take little small experiments. You're going to say to yourself, I can manage this. I'm going to do this. I can do this. I can have values-based action. I can think about what I want and how I'm going to enact that in my daily life. And I'm going to be able to take a small step towards it. And over time, that does reduce the anxiety and build
Mhm.
confidence in doing it.
Yeah, and it can be baby steps. I
Hmm.
think one of the things that comes up though is that the people who are in a lot of times the people who are in that position are such overachievers that then
Right.
we push ourselves to push through it. I can just push through this. And
Mhm.
if you find yourself saying that to yourself, I just need to push through, or even feeling it, is that, I mean, to me, that's a sign like, oh, as soon as I start saying I should, it means I don't want to be doing something. And sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm trying to become more aware, and I think it helps to become more aware of when when I'm saying to myself, just push through, because I feel like that could be detrimental over time.
Yeah, let's break that down into two parts. So first you're saying like the things that you feel like you should be doing. Well, is it that you should be doing it because this is something that you're feeling some resistance to, whether it's anxiety about doing it or questioning yourself even, but it feels like this is an action you need to take towards your own goals. In that case, you want to look at how can I do something that moves me in a toward action to my own goals? Like what can I say to those voices in my head that are saying like maybe not or don't take that risk? Then maybe you should. Then the answer that's
Yeah.
one of the rare occasions where saying to yourself you should would actually be useful. Maybe you should take the time in your day to meet with that colleague who's going to be really inspiring rather than, write a new outreach campaign. Maybe, if you're saying I really should do that, yeah, you probably should listen. That's aligned to the goals you want, perhaps.
Hmm.
But when you're pushing it away, when you're just pushing it down and just trying to get through it, what you're doing is you're actually kind of using this energy to deny things. And that's why we say, like, when you're noticing your feelings, you just want to accept them. Just notice them and don't try to change it. Just accept it. In acceptance and commitment therapy, there's this analogy of the beach ball. And so picture yourself in the water pushing a beach ball down. And it takes a lot of, maneuvering and energy to keep that beach ball underwater. So a couple things happen. When you're pushing that beach ball down, you're not enjoying the beach, you're not taking it in, you're not swimming or enjoying. Your energy is going towards pushing down this beach ball. You're also not going to be able to keep this up indefinitely. So at some point, you're going to get distracted or tired, and it's going to pop up and smack you in the face. So that's kind of, the way I think about pushing down those emotions.
They're going to smack you in the face.
They're going to smack you in the face. And also, that energy could be used elsewhere.
That is a very good point. You're expending energy keeping it all pushed down, and you could
Yeah.
be using that energy for something that makes you feel good.
Yeah. So, conversely, if you're doing something when you're telling yourself you're doing it because you should, and the reason you should is because it is something that you have defined as a good, healthy, goal-directed action for yourself,
Mhm.
you might just have to say to that, anxiety or that feeling, sit in the passenger seat and come along for the ride, right? You're just going to take it with you. You're not going to fight it and push it away. You're going to know it's there, but it's not going to stop you.
Yeah. Yeah. And again,
So,
that's where
two
that
different.
building up
Pushing it
that
away,
tolerance.
yeah, pushing it
Yeah.
away, your energy is in there. You're not in the present
Yeah.
moment, and you're going to get smacked in the face at some point.
I love that. I love that image that you can like
Mhm.
literally take your anxiety and say, okay, you're going here. You're in the
Mhm.
passenger seat, or maybe you're in the back seat. I'm going to put you in the back seat, in
Yeah.
the third row,
Yeah.
even, and I'm going to be here in the driver's seat because I'm the one who's in
Mhm.
charge.
And I know you're there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I really don't want your feedback right now.
Yes, but you can literally do that as a visualization, like,
Yeah.
picking it up and saying, okay, I'm putting you back here and I'm buckling myself into the driver's seat.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. So, we're almost at the end of our time. I do have one last question for you, though. If
Sure.
someone is thinking about stepping off that corporate ladder, but they feel afraid of what might come up for them internally, and I hope that this
Mhm.
conversation didn't scare anybody, but they're thinking about, what might come up internally, what would you want them to know?
Well, first, yeah, I hope too that this wouldn't scare somebody because these are things that people go through, but you can come out the other side of this, right? Remember, anxiety is adaptive, so fear is natural. And if you're stepping away from a structure, external validation, clear milestones, into something that you've built for yourself, I mean, those parts that were quieter, the uncertainty, the doubt, they may come forward, but like we just said, those are the passengers.
Yeah.
And you can tell them to get in the back seat. You might want to get to know them a little bit. You might want to say to, learn where they came from. Another analogy I've used sometimes is like Your anxiety can be like a parent bundling up a kid so tightly against the cold that they feel like they can't move their arms.
Like they're swaddled.
They're swaddled, right? It's well-meaning, but you got to move, right? So you can say, "No, thanks, I'm good. Thank you for your concern, but I'm good." These voices aren't really art in your head aren't really out to get you. They're trying to help you, but you don't need to be bubble wrapped right now.
Yeah.
You need them to take a back seat. So I think knowing this and knowing that these parts of yourself who want to do this for you are actually trying to help you is just adaptive for another time, perhaps adaptive in your childhood, not adaptive
Yeah.
now. And so, knowing this, it builds self compassion, right? You're saying to yourself, these are just parts of me that are trying to help me. I'm not actually finding it helpful, so I'm just going to say no thanks.
Hmm.
And I'm going to step away and do my own thing and step off the ladder and go on my own path. And that has amazing rewards. You can live a more value-driven, aligned life. You can stop having all of your self-worth tied to achievement. You can define your own goals. What does success look like to me? Like you said, your friend who said it's health.
Yeah.
Your job
Yeah.
doesn't care if you're healthy, only if you
That's
call
true.
out sick.
Yeah.
That's the only problem, not your actual health.
Yeah. And you really, I mean, it can be, it opens up so many doors.
Yeah. So the rewards are there, and you can
Yeah.
actually end up in a much better place. But growth is often uncomfortable
Yeah.
in the beginning, but very, very rewarding in the end.
Yeah. I mean, what's the whole old hermit crab analogy that, like, they outgrow their shell and then they have to shed that shell, which can be uncomfortable, and go find a bigger one.
Yeah, for a little while they're, vulnerable in the world, and then
Yeah.
they find a better place. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like I mean, it's certainly everything that we talked about is stuff that has come up for me both before I went out on my own and even once I did, when I realized, oh my goodness, like there's nobody to point to anymore. It's just me. So
Yeah,
maybe I should start to deal. So I really hope that this resonated with other people. And I'm sure it did. So I hope it resonated and I hope it helps. So
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. You'll have to come back. We'll do a part two. I feel
We'll
like
do.
there's more.
Oh, there's always more.
There's always more. There's always more. Okay. Well,
Thanks.
and that is one thing that I've learned, is that when you step off the ladder, you do lose the structure, and what's left is just really you. And that can be
Mhm.
uncomfortable, but it can also be where your real freedom starts. So,
Yeah, it's where you can really grow.
yeah, yeah. Good. Well, that is it for this episode of Around the Ladder. Remember, there's no one right way up, so keep taking your detours, making your moves, carving your own path. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who is on their own unconventional journey. See you next time. Laura, thank you again.
Thank you.